Oh, that looks
How's
good.
that?
That looks great.
Well, it's not hard to look great when it's me, you know? Let's see. I'm going to fix my hair up a little for you.
Dude, I got lockjaw.
All right.
Dude,
Looking very
I got lockjaw like 2 days ago.
I'm not
Um
going to make a joke, dude.
No, but it's for real. It's like affecting like my ability to talk. That's why I wasn't talking very much in the meeting last night, because I was just like I was in pain. I was like trying to like stretch it out. But it's definitely
Still not going to make any jokes here. TMJ and jaw stuff is a thing. I mean, there's a lot of emotional and stress related facial tightness and like sleeping issues. I'm actually going through a little program right now that was written originally by a doctor named John Sorno, and his whole thing is it's a mind body. He thinks about 50+% of pain, which comes in many different forms, right? Um, is emotionally related.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, well,
So some of it makes sense because of tension and subconscious, sleep movements. But I'm sure there's a lot to it. But he really believes a lot of back pain is a distraction from emotional issues.
and what is actually, I was talking to some of my students about like body trauma and pains coming from emotional, or body pains and things, tensions coming from emotional traumas. Um, and I like mentioned the book "The Body Keeps the Score"
Hmm.
um, by what's her name? Body Keeps the Score. Uh, this lady that has a really hard to pronounce name. Bessel van der Kolk.
Hmm. Okay.
Bessel van der Kolk. Anyways, but so that's interesting that like it's along the same line. I know that like we were talking about how like men tend to handle pain a lot less easily than women, and they found that like when kids would go get their vaccinations, a certain subset of boys would be more averse to the needle. They would be like, they would cry a lot longer afterward. And they found that the the correlation was that those boys were all circumcised.
Hmm.
And so
Interesting.
because circumcision can be very painful for a baby, and we're finding that like the babies uh we have like memories, we can hold memories a lot longer than we thought we could, or a lot further back than we thought we could. And so they're saying they think that basically that pain from early on in life was really traumatic, and it would affect these kids on like how they experience pain. And that's an emotional part of pain, because when you're a baby, like to feel that type of pain, babies aren't supposed to feel any pain, right? They're very fragile and you handle them delicately. But I think there's like an emotional aspect. All you know is your mother, and that she protects you, and barely just getting to know the world, then all of a sudden you're getting
All of a
cut
sudden,
up.
you get a sharp pain in your wiener.
Which is like the worst sharp pain. The worst kind
Right.
of pain that you can feel, right? Is the wiener.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's I never thought about that. Uh, I think our memories do go back that far, right? And the question is like, yeah, you're getting introduced to the world, and it's like, all right, kid, you're this is what life's about. It's about struggle and pain. uh, yeah, it's curious that it makes you more. So the people that so the boys that got vaccines and shots, they they um they were better equipped to handle it, or it was
No,
more
no, no. The
scary. It
ones
was more
it was
scary
more
for him.
scary. The
I
ones who
see.
were circumcised felt
Had a
pain
harder time
more.
with it.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
I don't think it's gonna be that hard.
I don't know. Needles are hot. Uh,
Yeah.
but I'm pretty emo today. And
Yeah.
so that, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, welcome to the world. Life is pain. You're right, because a bris happens like within 7 days of being alive, right?
Yeah.
So, but sometimes they also give the baby wine, so they get the baby drunk, and they don't really feel it. I can't remember if I cried or not. I mean, I guess most babies do, but like,
I mean, I was circumcised, and and there wasn't a Jewish tradition around that. That was just like a medical procedure. So,
right. Well, I got drunk, I think.
I don't think they got me drunk.
They got me drunk at 7 days old. So
That's a
maybe there's
little,
something to that.
yeah, yeah.
Maybe there's something to that. I wonder if people, boys that have gotten drunk at 7 days old are less they have less tendency to become alcoholics. Because I'm not, I'm never been, I don't have a strong need, or I don't have hangovers are withdrawals technically, but I can go without drinking if I want to.
Well, I think addiction is more of an emotional thing too, right? It's like
Totally.
you have some sort of hang up and you're using that substance or whatever it is that you're addicted to as an escape from reality, as a creating a new, a different experience from what you already experienced, which is usually some sort of emotional trauma or pain.
Yeah, the impulsiveness to get that feeling or escape. But also, I mean, a lot of it's physical, right? Physical addiction is just the biological and chemical needs.
Sure.
That's
Well,
what like
there's like the
withdrawals is.
dependence, and then
Right.
there's the
The
addictive
actual
habit.
behavior, right? Yeah. But yeah, you can be addicted to all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Some good, some bad.
I mean, some
Some
people are like addicted to
neutral.
like running, right? And like exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like they can become unhealthy, right? That where they overwork themselves and they do, way too much to their body, or they become become obsessed with a certain physique or something. So they develop eating disorders and stuff like that. But I mean, for the most part, like if you love that runner's high, like that's a good thing.
Yeah. It's a good thing if you're not killing your knees
Yeah.
or hurting yourself. But yeah. Um, yeah, I think the meeting was cool last night.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
it was nice. It's nice seeing the team. Everyone's positive in that group. We have a cool team, Jaunty's awesome. It's growing. I like the idea of growing in some capacity during quarantine,
Yeah.
as a business, but
Especially the
also as
online.
people. Yeah.
Totally. Totally. And I want to like kind of create a little bit of a roadmap for some online stuff, and maybe even start creating some sort of roadmap for like corporate stuff in New York, since I have a list of companies that I can start reaching out to. But yeah, like that'll I think like seeing the roadmap of like where this is going to go, we could create multiple products, right? We could create like an assertiveness, like one-off product. We can create, you know, I think we just need to like figure out how we're, what we're going to work on at what times, right? Like what's
Right.
first, what's next.
Yeah, and I think what this time has shifted me into doing is listening better to the world, listening better to the market, right? So as the market shifts, and it's hard to tell, are people loving to, because like my girlfriend's company just took a survey about, do you want to stay home longer? Are you comfortable? Do you want to come back to the office? And everyone's like, I want to stay home. Like, some people are using the excuse of, I'm scared of COVID, but some are just like,
Yeah.
I really just don't want to be coming into the office. So,
But they don't want to deal with like a 2 hours worth of commuting
commute
a
and
day,
people and stress at work and being fake or whatever. And so, um, there's pros and cons of being home during work, because a lot of people's social lives were because of work. So there's pros and cons, but I think what I'm trying to get at is listening to what people are going to be doing more. Are they going to be wanting to continue more in-person classes, or are they going to be wanting to be at home more? And listening is kind of a great skill, not just to big things like the market, but obviously to small things and conversations, like really listening to what people are needing right now, and really listening, even when you're having a conversation with someone, like even on this podcast, right? And I watch people do podcasts, and this is what I'm trying to do, is really pause and listen to what you're saying instead of thinking of what I'm going to say next. Right. So, and that's, I think, because I have a lot to learn from you, Craig. Like, I didn't know about the circumcision thing, and that's always new information. And no, really, I mean, because that's a part of my culture, and that's something new that I learned today. Whereas if I was trying to, hey, what would be a cool thing to say next? Sometimes I'll think of things I want to think of, but I'll also try to open myself up to listening, because you have a lot of things to say that I don't know. And I hope I have a lot of things to say that you don't know. And that's what makes a conversation really powerful, I think.
Yeah, like taking that approach to like learning and conversation. I had this really interesting experience this past weekend. I actually kind of want to tell the story, like go into it in a little bit, but basically I had this really tough conversation with a protester, and instead of like turning it into an argument, or uh even just taking some time to like to like just tell them what I felt or what was going on with me. I used that as an opportunity to just listen and learn and like see their perspectives. And in the whole weekend, like I was going out with students, and we were talking to a lot of strangers, practicing our skills and having these conversations. In these conversations, I learned so much, like just so much information, so much perspectives, stories. I was out here in Oakland, and I learned from this one guy the other day. He was talking about the protests and stuff and the riots, and he was also talking about like the homelessness. And if you've been in the Bay Area recently, like homelessness is like all over the place. It's like it's so like it's unavoidable in most circumstances. Like every town has like a ton of homeless people. And the dude was like, yeah, man, Oakland, he was like this kind of cholo guy. He was kind of like, he was a Hispanic dude. And he's like, yeah, I'm born in Mexico, but I was raised in Oakland. I'm from, I've been here, most of my life. And he said, Oakland used to be a lot better when there were crimes. Like when there was crime. He's like, Oakland was better when there was crime. And we all just kind of like looked at each other. We're like, yeah, whatever. And like kind of went over our head. And then he just kind of reiterated. He's like, yeah, man, when there was crime, like we didn't have all these homeless people everywhere. We had the gangs. Actually, the gang members used to use them as target practice and stuff.
Oh my God.
And then like we all looked at each other. Well, what the fuck? And he's like,
holy shit.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, they would like hide, like so they wouldn't be out. Just we used to be able to like go to the tennis court and play tennis and stuff. And he's like, now it's just it's like a homeless encampment. It's a bunch of tents and stuff like that.
I would
He's
never
like,
have thought of that.
yeah. And I was like, well, that's a perspective. Like, that's definitely a perspective. And then,
Wow.
and then he goes, yeah. And then all these riots and stuff, like they're burning down the Target and all this.
Oh
And
my
nobody's
God.
getting arrested. Nobody's getting in trouble. And, who's left with the short end of the stick? He's like, us law abiding citizens. Like,
Right.
we don't get anything. We pay our
Right.
taxes and get nothing out of it. And I was like, well, I mean, there are definitely valid points there. And that's an interesting perspective.
It's just
Uh,
a new way of looking at it.
yeah.
And whether it's, long-term good, sustainable, obviously people being used as targets, target practice is
Yeah, that's
not
not a good
probably
thing.
the best thing in the world, but like, it's just an interesting shift, things you don't think about. Exactly. And you can learn stuff. And then the next step is like, how do you retain and, you know, uh, I will try tonight at least twice or 10, 15 minutes um, to review what we said, try to rerun the things that we spoke about. I'm going to think about circumcision. I'm thinking about different ways of looking at homelessness, and, just try to review that. And that's where I think you see people that can communicate better and understand and be more abstract and creative, because I think they say, you know, 30 days later, you only remember 2% of what you tried to learn or tried to remember, because there's working memory and long-term memory, or, we don't really know how it works, but yeah, so that's just really interesting to me, because uh, personally, I'd love to remember all this stuff better so I can just have it. Hopefully we have unlimited storage in our brains, and you can just spend a little time on it and remember those things. And there's a balance, there's a balance of trying to listen. Some stuff is absolute crap that you don't want to listen to, or maybe not want to listen to, but you truly feel like, sorry, I have people working here. You truly feel what they're saying is bullshit. But even in those situations, you can, number one, learn what not to do. You see somebody saying something in a certain way. This is great for what we teach. And I think, a lot of the stuff we talk about in Jaunty is undoing the bad stuff, undoing the unattractive stuff, undoing the low status stuff. And so you can learn what not to do just by listening and observing.
Yeah, it's like being non-reactive, right? Like if you're
Right.
really reactive to, somebody's opinion, like you're not really taking a time to listen and like think about why they feel that way or why they think that certain position, right? And like, yeah, this guy, he, because we didn't say anything, we were just kind of like sitting there listening, but like, really? He opened up and like told us about that experience and why he thought it was kind of important.
Right. Yeah, you can see, at least you can also learn that different things are important to different people, or the same thing is less or more important to different people,
Right.
and that's just the fact that you sit back and you're like, wow, how different and weird people are, and in a good way, and not weird, because you're also different and weird, and um and sometimes you can almost be on both at the same time, right? So
Yeah,
like,
well, you don't get stuck in a bubble, like an echo chamber of hearing the same things over and over again. And if you can like really open up somebody up and they tell you something different, you can start to think about it and be like, okay, well, I can understand why you might have this perspective. It's empathy.
right, yeah, like let's take like a well, we can go deep in this if you want. I have some
Sure.
ideas.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So let's take like a deep let's take a deep topic that is not on the current events list, like pro-choice or pro-life.
Okay.
Okay, so I mean, personally, overall, I'll just open up and be like, I'm personally on the side of women should have accessible clinics, and abortion should be accessible. It should be legal, obviously, and Yeah. So because of that, for many reasons, I believe that. And so I guess I'm technically on the pro-choice side, right? But what ends up happening is, if someone would, or me back in the day, maybe would meet someone on the pro-life side, right? What's the first thing that comes to your mind of how let's just break this down is, I meet someone who's pro-life. I'm automatically thinking what? I'm automatically thinking, oh, they're on the right.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're conservative. They're
The first thing I think of, right, is, unfortunately, not now, but what I used to maybe have thought about was, oh, they're on the right. And then you also think oh, maybe they're religious, they're just a religious or fanatic. Right. And I'm like, oh man, that's so different than me. I'm not I think I'm more in the center, but like in this case, we tend to take this pro-choice and we take it to the left. Okay. But let's say we're going to have a conversation with that person, right? And you have an open conversation and you hear them say something like, okay, yeah, I'm not very religious, but I'm just, but religious also has reasons for believing that, right? But then the first thing they say is, Eric, first of all, the reason I'm pro-life is, first of all, I just can't really stand the idea of killing a baby, right? That, yes, it's very small, young, embryo or whatever, but I just can't stand that idea. Well, that's very hard to argue against, right? Being pro-choice,
it's a moral argument. It's not whether or not it's a
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, the first thing that I think of, like, well, fucking fair enough, like you don't want babies to die. That's good. Okay. Right. And a way you can almost think about this is, what if an alien came down and you tried to explain that to an alien, right? They would be going back and forth, right? They would be like, oh, I think it's good that you don't want babies to die, right? And then the other argument is, well, there's all these circumstances and it's a woman's body, it's a woman's choice, right? And then the alien would be like, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense too, right? Without having a left or right side. But what if we look at the backing of that, right? The backing of pro-life, for instance. Well, hey, for millions and millions of years, they might have this deep down feeling and unconscious feeling of, for millions and millions of years as humans, having a baby and having it survive and having the mother survive was just like a miracle, right? Like it was just a miracle. It was something that, God, most of them died and like this one survived. Like deep down inside, right? That's a feeling, just it's like now we have medical advances to where it's, we take it for granted that there's a high chance of the baby and mother both surviving. Right. So then you look at it from that perspective, and so you can start opening up. You're like, wow, maybe there's some deep rooted thing of still feeling that, humans are in survival mode and we should be, for the greater good, just keeping our survival, growing and for lack of a better word, populating, so you listen to that instead of being like, oh, they're right, or oh, they're just religion is a part of that. So I think it's interesting if you break down creating different angles of arguments.
Yeah. And like taking a listen and being like, okay, this, not everything is black and white. In fact, a lot of the time there's a gradient and there's, different things. And like looking at the pro-choice versus pro-life argument, right? They're two separate arguments that aren't even like directly correlated. It's usually when it's somebody's pro-life, they're saying, I believe this baby is a life, and so I don't want to kill that, and I think it's wrong to kill that. I think it's a life, it has the right to live. And then on the pro-choice, it's a woman's body and it's her right, and we shouldn't stop or prevent, some sort of, a person from doing what they want with their body. So I like those two arguments are completely opposite, right? They're not even completely opposite. They're completely different arguments. It's like this is killing versus this isn't killing, because you can have this what's the word, or what's the phrase when you have two opposing beliefs?
Cognitive dissonance.
Cognitive dissonance. You have this cognitive dissonance. Like for me, like, yeah, personally, I think it is killing, and I think it is very sad and morally kind of wrong. However, I think that, I think that, like, if case be needed, right, like you would be able to have an abortion. So having it as an option, I don't think is something to legislate. However, I think it is still murder.
Yeah,
And
totally.
like to ever have to have one, I think that is something that you wouldn't just do willy-nilly to have an abortion. Like there's a lot of I think there's a lot of emotional trauma that comes with that for the most part. I mean, some people can probably do it without any questions asked, but I've met people who've had abortions and told me that, like, it was terrible going through it afterwards, like how their body, like all the hormones and everything, just how it affected them. And like somebody I was talking to recently said that she had an abortion before, a few years back, and she said that, like, when she was pregnant, she knew, and it felt like, she described it as, it feels like a light inside of me. And when when I had the abortion, it felt like that light was gone.
Wow.
And like,
Really powerful.
and that's an interesting way of putting it, saying it feels like a light inside of you. She did use some language of, like, going around and bound, saying, well, it's just a cluster of cells, and, like,
I'll be right back. Yeah, I'm listening.
okay.
Okay.
She was saying that, it is like just a bunch of cells and stuff, and she didn't say that it was a person, right? But she was like, it definitely felt like is something very different. You feel very different. And
Wow.
afterwards, after there's like a big hormonal change that causes, a lot of time, causes some big emotional shifts, or, like, just feelings. So I think that's something to, like, also think about too in that argument. It's like, oh, you gotta, you can't just say, all right, I'm pro choice. You get the abortion and, like, go back to normal. It's like, no, you have to, like, I think there has to be a little bit of introspection and, like, thinking about how that behavior or how that action has affected your life, because it is a big decision. It's a big thing. And I think that's why, like, the whole argument is still going on today, even though like there was Roe v. Wade was, like, in what, the 70s or 60s. So yeah.
Yeah, no, the ripple effects will continue and are continuing. I mean, I don't know if I ever told you this, but I've gone through it before. I've had an abortion. No, but when I was 16 and my girlfriend was 17, we went through that, and that was very emotionally um, jarring. It was a big decision. It was sad. It was hard even at that age, And so,
Yeah.
um,
That's why whoever I'm with, like, when if they were to get into, because I had a similar situation
you have to have that
before.
conversation.
Yeah, I would have the conversation. I would say something like, okay, it's your decision, but I'll just impregnate you again.
Right. Willingly. I mean, but yeah, that's a good deal. I mean, like, it'll happen. It means that you're both are pretty fertile, which is good.
Right.
And this is the second time in a row we've talked about fertility. And our,
It's definitely on our minds for sure.
yeah, 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 and yeah. Who knows? Yeah, who knows? Who knows which one would have been a better kid? The unexpected one that was, like, very natural and just whatever, or the try for having a kid. Maybe there's a difference.
Yeah.
Which, who knows? But yeah, the beliefs and the listening skills, like that's a hard conversation for people to have without getting defensive. And it's true. It's like if you're just going to yell and not yell, but if you're just going to vent off, what's the word I'm looking for? If you're just going to spew out things that you already know and believe, you're not going to really get anywhere. Like best
and then
case
just like dismiss
scenario
what the other
is,
person says, right? Like dismiss
yeah,
their beliefs.
yeah. I mean, you're not going to really change the other person's belief and soul, right? So it's better it's almost more selfish listening, because you're like, oh, what can I learn from this? Or like, what can I really, not selfish, but it's like, it's much more self-improving, obviously.
I think the other thing to like look at is like, what's your intention when you're talking to somebody in a situation where you're having an argument, right? Like, what like where they have an opposing belief, or you have a different belief from them, maybe you're ignorant or whatever. It's like, what is your intention there? Is your intention to like defend yourself, or is your intention to like try to convert them to your belief, or is it like to get a better understanding of one another and create a greater sense of community or a greater sense of connection with that person?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, can you put in a different intention before? Do you ever? Can we? Here's the question. Can we think of a situation where we don't want to put in my intention is to learn and listen and create better community, right? Maybe if it truly is. I mean, if it's a physical confrontation, that's different, right? You're not. I mean, if you're getting attacked physically, if you're going into, I'm thinking of more realistic things, like if you're going into a negotiation or a debate on stage, right? So this is what's interesting, is a lot of like, you see a lot of people clicking and loving the YouTube videos of like, Ben Shapiro destroys left analyst, you know,
Destroys. Yeah.
of course it's fun to watch. That's entertainment. Ben Shapiro is just sharp as a freaking ninja blade. Okay.
The tiny ninja blade.
But is Ben, so I think Ben's intention when you're in front of millions of people is you kind of want to win because you're teaching the millions of people.
He's also trying to
Right.
galvanize I mean, like what he's doing is galvanizing his audience, the people who already agree with him.
Right.
And he also polarizes. And usually when it's like one of those videos where it's like this person debunks this thing, it's just as a, usually I would say it's as a point to find the most ridiculous shit that somebody
Okay.
have an idea.
Beyond, right. Beyond the like clicks and likes and fans, which you're right, is I have the feeling you're right that is the number one driver. But there are people, maybe like Jordan Peterson, let's say, because the same thing happens with Jordan Peterson is, Jordan Peterson destroys blah, blah, blah. I think there's a little bit less of that. I think there is, he'll try to listen, and he doesn't try to destroy them for the fact of destroying them, right? He wants them to learn, or at least it feels that way. So if you're in front of a crowd and you have fans or people watching you, or a video camera, or a live TV or something, you're on a news network, I think there is some of that debate. Or if you're going into a debate, right? Even going into a debate, you want to listen better. But I think there is some of that, okay, let's win. There's a little bit of winning feeling, and winning becomes good if you're factually correct, and if you have 5 arguments to their every one, so others can learn. But for 99% of the time, when we're not being watched or recorded, I think the intention you were talking about of let's listen, let's learn, let's be precise, and of what we're trying to communicate, and maybe there's something this person knows that I don't. Let's build on each other's ideas, rather than I want to win and be right and not learn anything from this other than I can be factually better than you.
Yeah. And like, exactly what's the intent? Is the intention to get to know them, or to open up, be vulnerable with that person? Is it to even potentially show them that you have a different perspective, right? And maybe we can look at these two perspectives side by side and get an understanding that we have different experiences, and that because of our different experiences, we have, we have these different beliefs, which aren't not which doesn't invalidate one another. It's just that we have different experiences.
Right.
And that, like, this is like a perfect transition, actually, or like perfect introduction into like the story that I was going to say. So this past weekend, I went to
Half Moon Bay.
and at first the waves, it was super choppy, and
All right, Jaunty inside joke there.
yeah, inside joke. um no, so like on Saturday, I went out with students who they wanted to practice. I actually spent 8 hours with them. It was like really, it was a lot of time. But there was like 7 of us. Yeah, there were 7 of us, and I split them into 2 teams. I went with one group of 3, and then the other group of 3 went out, and we were walking around Lake Merritt in Oakland, and approaching strangers, practicing our social skills, and just having trying to have good conversations, meet people, and have these
Cool.
types of experiences where we learn stuff, right? It's not just about learning the skills, but also about learning about the people, and learning, and empathizing and making connections. And so my group, we had worked our way on one side of the lake, and the other group was on the other side of the lake. And it was probably about like 4 hours in, or 5 hours in. And we ended up walking to one side of the lake. And after we had seen like a whole march of like Black Lives Matter protesters, it was like 1,000 people marched in the opposite direction. So we're figuring like, we'll just go over here, and maybe there's just people walking around, hanging out, whatever. So we get onto this part of the lake where there's this big, it's kind of like these cement like benches that span for about 100 yards, and there's like 3 of them. And so it's like kind of almost like a stepped level amphitheater with like 3 levels, and then it looks out into the lake. And
Cool.
there were a bunch of people here. There's a bunch of people here, and first thing I noticed, there's a DJ playing music. There were
Nice.
people with like solo cups. They were like drinking. People were smoking and drinking, and it was a very social environment. It seemed like a party. I was like, great. This is like our social, like this is like the replacement for like going to a bar right now, because like people are here being social in this moment.
Must have
And
felt good.
it well it
I mean, if you
it,
haven't
it
seen it
did.
for a while.
Yeah, it did feel really good. And we're like, yeah, like let's meet some people. And it was all these people, majority were Black people. And they had been like, they were at the tail end of their protest. And so they were just like hanging out, the DJ was there or whatever. And they had a teepee. There was like all kinds of stuff. There were like snacks and, drinks and snacks, and music, and people hanging out. So I'm sitting, I go sit down on one of the walls on the little seating area, and I'm like, all right guys, have at it, go approach some people. And so the 3 of them go and approach this group that was behind me. And so they're about like 10-15 feet away, and they started talking to this one lady with a sign, and then she had her boyfriend there, and like another lady was on her left. And so she had the sign. They were like talking to her about that, I guess. They had, and I wasn't really paying attention. I was just kind of looking at body language and stuff. Well, about a minute, 2 minutes in, I walk over to them to see what's going on, and I have my sunglasses on, and these bad boys right here. So I have my sunglasses on. They're dark. You don't see my eyes or anything. It was sunny out.
Very cool.
And and so I'm just watching. I'm just observing. And the lady that they're talking to, she is kind of like, looking me up and down, and like looking at the other 2. And I'm just like kind of looking at the students and kind of looking around. I can't really hear what they're saying because there's music and I'm not in the conversation already. And she like points me out. And she's like, "You're giving me weird vibes." And I was like, "What?" And um and she's just like, you know, whatever, goes back to the conversation. She's like, "I like you guys, I like it. This one I don't like," to me. And I was just like, what's going on?
Whoa.
And like I kind of tried to like get into the conversation. I was like, what's going on? And she's like, "Are you a cop?"
Uh,
And I was like, "What?" And she's like, "You got your sunglasses on, like, you know, like stiff or whatever." I was like, "I'm just like looking. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what your conversation's about or anything." And they like had ended their conversation, and she kept like coming at me. And I'm like, "Look, I don't," and I sat down right next to her, and I'm like, I took my sunglasses off. I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, talk to me. What's going on?" And so she's like, "You come up here, blah, 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 blah." And I was like, "Oh, well, do you know what we're doing? Did they tell you what we're doing?" And she was like, "No." I was like, "Oh, we're doing our we're practicing our social skills, like meeting people and stuff." And we kind of like explained it, and she's like, "Oh, that's really cool." And then she like, it kind of turned, and she was like, wait, so you're their awkward teacher." and and like, and you came in thinking that you could come here and talk to people. And I was like, "Well, like we were like all around the lake, and I live here." I was like, "We're all around here and like talking to people also, you know, all day." And she starts coming at me like, "That's so inappropriate. You are out of pocket for coming here to our Black Lives Matter protest, blah, 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 blah." And I was like, "We're just here to like meet people." She's like, "No, you're practicing. You're running a social experiment." And then she called it social integration, which was not a good like, I didn't want to follow that thread at all. Like,
oh,
to call it a social integration, not appropriate. But
right.
and like, but I think she just kind of didn't, that was just like, it wasn't something that she was thinking about. But um and she had a lot of tension, right? Like, this lady had so much tension. I felt like I was like, and she was like coming at us like argue, you know, being very argumentative and stuff. And we're just like, "Oh, we're here just meeting people. We're like trying to like, we're practicing our social skills, like, but we're here to like make friends and like, you know, make connections." And she was like, "Oh no, this is so inappropriate, blah, blah, blah. You should have gone to if you wanted to go to the protest." I was like, "We didn't even try to come to the protest." She's like, "Well, if you wanted to go to the protest, you should have gone to the one in Berkeley. There's tons of white people over there." And I was like, I was like, "What?"
Wow.
And yeah, so she had a lot of tension. And I was like, by this time, one of the students had to go home. So he had already left. So it was just me and two other students. And like, I was like, I got them into this mess, so I'm going to take the brunt force of it and get us out of it. And so I just took over the conversation for my students. And basically, because, you know, what we teach at Jaunty is all like it's all behavior level stuff, right? It's all the behaviors that make an attractive person, all the behaviors that help you get along with people interpersonally. But what's on top of that is culture. And we don't do culture stuff. This is not my realm of expertise. This is not my thing, right? Like, to anything about like the Black Lives Matter protests or anything, or like, you know, like this is not my thing. But one thing I do know about culture is that it can be an amplifier of a feeling, right? Like, if you are in a cultural event at a specific time, surrounded by people of your culture doing, you know, participating in this event, like this Black Lives Matter protest, your feelings around what's going on in that moment are going to definitely be revolving around what that cultural movement is about. So she had a lot of like pent up tension, sadness, anger, all around what she was protesting about. And it just came when there was something that wasn't in line with what was going on in her culture. She felt that like it was it was coming from me, a white guy, uh, she felt like it was like coming in as an attack on her, or like on their culture, and it was like a disrespectful thing. And so I had to take this brunt force attack from this lady, and she was like, and it wasn't like an attack. She's like, she kept on saying, I'm coming down on you hard, but like, you're lucky. Like, I'm telling you how it is. Like, other people might not take it so well, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I kept reframing it. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I think this is a great conversation. and and what I kept on doing was just restating our intentions and letting her vent out that like aggression and that anger and that, you know, frustration that she had. Because when she was in that moment of like this high tension from all this protesting and everything, thinking about all the Black lives that have been lost due to law enforcement unjustly and things like that, she's at this high tension. She only has so much emotion that she can hold in, and she can't take in anything more. So I had to let her vent until I could come in with my intentions, show her what we were trying to do, and then she could accept that. And what ended up happening was we had like this really long conversation. It was about an hour long of a really tough, like high tension conversation where she kept coming down on me. And I was just like, look, I'm sorry if I offended you, or if we offended you, or, culturally, this wasn't our intention. Our intention was to make friends and like get other perspectives and stuff. And and then I kept turning him back around. Like, and this is a great opportunity right now, like having this conversation. I love this conversation. And this is exactly what we wanted. And so it kept reframing. And slowly, like, she started calming down. But a quarter way through our conversation, a TV reporter came by with a camera and a microphone. He's like, oh my gosh, you have this conversation, or like, I'm going to get in on this conversation. And I did a counter interruption thing. This was in front of the students. I did a counter interruption. I was like, hey, we're having a really, really important conversation now. And, and he like,
Nice.
and he's like, oh no, but I'm not gonna say anything. I'll just put the microphone right here. He's like, he asked, do I have permission? And like, the lady gave him permission. I didn't say anything. And so, so he just put the microphone down. And so it might be on TV somewhere at some point in time.
Amazing.
But we had this like really, really, really tough conversation where it was like, I'm just like, you may have an opposing view of me, or you may have some sort of combative view towards me, but I'm not looking at this like it is a combat. I'm not looking at this like it is some sort of situation where it's negative. I'm just taking in information and like getting to know you and getting to show you a bit of my intentions and my experience. And at the end of it, it turned, it was like, we shook hands. I met her boyfriend and her daughter, and it was like it was kind of an emotional experience, and it was really like, it was educational, and it was a good conversation. And like, for me, like, leaving it, I was like, it's kind of sad that she didn't want me to be a part of her community. Because and you can't make, people are going to choose their own paths and their own, who they want to associate with. But at the end of the day, like, we had a nice civil conversation. And I was saying to the students, they were loving it. They're like, oh my God, you sold me on the masterclass in the assertiveness, like, already, just from that. And I was like, at the end of the day, like, like, I could have, if I were a different person, with different skills, I could have left that entire place thinking, screw the Black Lives Matter people, they're jerks. And because of that experience, and because I was able to like take it in and just talk to this lady and kind of reframe it. This is a conversation that we can keep having. It doesn't have to, I don't have to take your criticisms and then leave. I can take your criticisms, talk to you, tell you my intentions, and then you can understand where I might be coming from. And then and if you're open to my criticisms, then we can talk then. But and just keep it going. But you know, if I were any different person, I could have just like left and been all upset, and
Wow.
nothing would have, you know, nothing would have come out of it, nothing good, right? But so using an assertiveness and that mindset of like, I'm here to learn in these conversations, and like just being open to seeing other people's point of view and to express myself. All I want to do is express myself. And that was a crazy experience that I had this last weekend.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's at the heart of everything going on. You were in the middle of, you know, the point of this is having that type of dialogue. And I feel like she probably, hopefully feels great about being able to communicate that to you. And you gave her a safe place to do it in some sense while venting. One little misstep, it could have blown up in the wrong way because it's such a touchy subject, but you handled it, you know, really well. So great, you know, great job. And I think you're right. It's all about that intention.
Yeah,
You
like
know,
I
you
don't want to have
have
to
to right
step on
intention.
eggshells,
Yeah,
right?
no,
Like
no, that's
I,
not what being assertive is. You know, it's about being truthful to yourself, and you know, the mindset of,
respecting.
oh, that's what I was about to say, the mindset of respecting rather than thinking about it as me against you, or the second you start putting yourself in a, this is a confrontation, it becomes a confrontation because you almost look for those things, you know. And she was on that side, it sounded like, up front, and you just kept your stance of, this isn't a confrontation, this is a conversation. And
Yeah,
that's really powerful. It'd be great, you know. It's cool that hopefully a lot of that was recorded by that news channel, and that
yeah.
can
I
be,
was like wishing, I was like, man, I wish we could have recorded this in some way, you know?
you might
Like,
be able to, well, it was recorded, maybe you can call them and ask them about it.
yeah,
But yeah, that's what assertive is, and open dialogue is all about, you know, and standing your ground. Because if you also took the angle of, I'm in the wrong, oh yeah, I'm in the wrong, or you could have been angry, like you said, and those two would have been, well, one wouldn't have been true to your feelings, and the other would have been just self-inflicting, where it's not going to help anybody, and it's going to create more fear and anger or whatever.
right.
So yeah, great job, my man.
Yeah, it was
It's
a
quite the
really cool
experience.
experience. Yeah, and then we met up with the the other group of students after that, and they're like, man, we just had such a great time. We like met we met people, and like we got invited to a potluck that we're trying to organize, and we made so many friends. What did you guys do?
Right.
I just started cracking
uh,
up. I could not hold it together.
we went deep in
Yeah,
this last
we
hour and a
went
half.
real we went real deep. It was pretty cool.
That's awesome. I think I love that. That's the stuff I love about what we teach, is being able to be in those conversations more, you know. Like, yeah, that's an amazing story. And like, I feel like I've had stories like that too, where in the past, I've, you know, been able to put myself in a situation and things might have been heated or tense, but it's all about frame. You know, it's all about like, this is not a confrontation. This is what we need to talk. This is what we need to be doing. You know, I'm really enjoying this conversation. I hope you are too. Or I feel like this is a productive conversation rather than surface level stuff. I hope you feel that way as well. And so the things you learn from that kind of brings back to what we were saying. You know, you probably learned a lot from that conversation, and hopefully she learned a lot from that conversation.
I literally think like I think I should be the CEO of Hard Conversations because
Yeah, totally.
because I literally the next day I had to have another hard conversation with a girl I've been seeing. Um,
Hmm.
like, you know, I had told her that I'm moving and everything, and she has, you know, I really like her, and she has feelings for me, and um, basically like she asked me to be her boyfriend. And I was like, I can't do that. right? And this is not what what my intention is right now. And I just don't feel, like that's the right move. And plus I'm also seeing another girl. So I've been seeing these two ladies, and she asked me if I was seeing somebody else. And I said, yes. She got all upset and like walked out. And I walked out to go talk to her. And basically I was like, look, this is how I see it. Like, I care about both of you. I care about you, but I'm also leaving. This is part of my life. This is something that I feel like I need for myself. And if I don't do it, I'm going to have regrets. I'm going to have whatever. And like, because of the timing, I don't think the time, like I could see us together in a different time. And I was just like kind of heart of my sleeve like that, and just kind of open about everything. And she's like, how could you can't care about two people, at the same time, yada yada. And I'm just like, this is how I feel. I'm sorry. I don't want to hurt you. This is why I'm telling you the truth and everything. And this is why I told you prior. We actually had a conversation about dating other people before. And, it's just, as time progresses, you have to continue that conversation. And so it went from that to, okay, let's go for a little walk. And then we sat down and we talked more. And she's like, well, maybe I could come with you and blah blah blah. I'm like, look, don't like build up this fantasy of who I am and who we are, and this, like, if it works out, it works out. But I don't right now, that's not the time to make that decision. And at the end of it, she was like, I think you're a really good person. Like, she could have, like, I was like, look, I'm not trying to play you. I'm not trying to be a player here and just play you and manipulate you and get you to like me. Like, if you don't think this is like, if you don't think this is going somewhere, like, we should stop seeing each other. Right? If you think this is like going to be counterproductive, we should stop seeing each other. And maybe that is for the best. And she's like, no, I think you're a good guy. And like, I think we can still enjoy the time that we have, though it's limited. And like, I don't think you're trying to manipulate me. And at the end of it, like, then we went for another walk and we had food, we got food, and it was a great rest of the day. Um, so like, one day or right after the other, I had to have these really hard conversations. And I think I've just gotten so good at it with all the skills that I practice of assertiveness over the years, through the Jaunty trainings and just through, creating a life for myself that has more experiences. Right? When you're open and honest with people and you're assertive with people, it creates more opportunities. To just by expressing what you desire, you get more of what you want, and you get more opportunities for other people to emotionally invest in you, because they see that you're vulnerable and open. And then you start they start being open and vulnerable to you. And that just creates more relationship opportunities, more relationship experiences. And I think, like, because of that, I've had more experiences where I've just been able to be like this hard conversation guy. And like, because I'm assertive, because I'm self-expressive and assertive, it just, like, it happens when I see bullshit, I call it out, and then somebody comes down on me, and then we have the hard conversation, and then repeat ad infinitum. But then at the end of each of those conversations, like, I'm respected more. And it's so
Exactly.
awesome. It's so awesome. Like, they like me more and they respect me more because I am who I am. And like, I know I have good intentions. Like, I just think, like, I think about this stuff, like, I don't, it's not like I threw on a mask and I was like, oh, Eric taught me how to do this social stuff, so I'm going to put on the Eric mask and be Eric. No, it's like, I'm going to strip away all the negative stuff that happened to me and that caused me to be a certain way. And then I go back to my childhood self and the most pure form of who I am. And I just pull that out, that light that is me, and pull that out, and I'm going to let that shine and just be me vulnerably, and people love it, or they hate it. But
Right.
usually if they have good intentions, they love it.
Yeah,
And
dude, I mean, that's the Jaunty way, and I'm really proud of you. I know we both grown over the last few years, and I think, um, that's the goal, is you essentially being you, you know, and that if every that goes back to how important truth is that subconsciously, long term, trust will completely overpower um, breaking rapport, right? So trust will always keep the relationship strong in that sense, because I've been in very similar situations, and at the end of the day, it's like people want to be around you because, hey, this what they're saying is making me face myself a little bit, and either what I wanted, not getting what I want, how I react to that. But if the person has that underlining truth, right? Exactly what you said. You can have the worst conversation in the world, not the worst conversation, but the most difficult
tense,
situation,
yeah.
the most difficult conversation in the world. But they still want to go get a drink with you after, and they still want to talk to you the next day, right? And that's the sign that, like, hey, you know what? Damn, the realness is coming out, and there was, because they know that nobody's there trying to play them or manipulate them. And so going into conversations being like, I think having the harder conversations more often than you think during a relationship or a friendship is essential, because rapport, like we say, rapport is like a muscle, where if you have tiny micro tears, it ends up getting stronger if you do it correctly, rather than you don't want to break trust. That would be like pulling the muscle or tearing it or something. And so it's powerful. It's so nice, and it's just so freeing as well. Because if you were to sugarcoat that conversation and just say more things of what they want to say, right? They might be less hurt in a way for that day or whatever. But when they go back to their subconscious and what they're feeling about you, they're gonna feel much more distant long term.
Yeah, and I think that what it does is it like sheds a light on the reality that people don't really care about commonality. Like I think people spend so much time trying to find something in common or agree with other people, be so agreeable that other people like them, that it actually prevents them from getting closer to the people that they want to be closer to. And yeah, like if you're open and vulnerable, at the end of the day, even if you disagreed with that other person, and you had good intentions, they're gonna still want to grab a beer with you. They're gonna still want to, like, they're gonna be, because they can trust you, you can trust them. And so they might be like, hey, I'm having I'm having a birthday party, you want to come to that? Or ask, they might be able to help you, watch your kids while you're busy at work or something like that, right? Just having that understanding of each other. It has nothing to do with, I mean, commonality can help with like building an understanding of each other, in that if you have shared experiences, if you have shared interests, then there's a shortcut to kind of understanding each other a little bit, right? Like if you're from the same area, right, there are culturally things that you both accept or that you both have experienced, right? Like for me, I'm from a I'm from a small town of that's 80% Mexican. And so when I meet somebody else, so there's things that come from that, right? Like there's cultural things in that area. There's a culture of a type of people, of what is, the type of music is played, the type of food that is around, the type of, whatever it is, the small family cultural things, values, and activities, right? When I meet somebody who's from that area, or from I don't know, like this girl I'm dating is from Fresno, which is very Hispanic and rural agricultural kind of area, even though Fresno is kind of a bigger town. Like we have similar like understanding of who we are, and we have similar leanings politically or similar whatever. So it's kind of like a better understanding. However, it doesn't mean that you get along with that person more. Like
Right.
and it doesn't mean that because I'm from that small town, I can't meet somebody from Seattle and like not understand them and not empathize with them and not get a deep connection with them.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, commonality is the first thing we usually look at and look for if we're going to build relationships. And I think maybe sometimes we overvalue it. Marriages tend to work better if you have more, or at least certain things in common, right? So that's for marriage. I know there was a lot of research on that. But you also learn more when you meet people that you don't have stuff in common with. And of course, friendships and business relationships can be met, or can be had in that situation. But that's why at Jaunty we mix all those things in, right? It's like it's nice to create that, like, that cake of like, cool, these are commonalities, cool, these are, same sense of humor is like an important one, right? Beliefs and goals, right? You need to have both wanting a family and wanting
Values,
kids, right?
right? Values are important to have in common. I think
Right.
that's absolutely. But
Yes.
like both liking the same books or movies or sports, like I don't think that's important.
Right. Those are more surface level
Or
things that
having, yeah,
could
or have,
reflect values in some sense, but maybe books are different than food, for instance.
sure.
Right. Like you might like a different type of food. You're not going to not marry someone because they like pizza and you like, burritos. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it depends on what it is for sure. But there's a really good book. Man, I can't remember. It's really hard to get, actually. It's it's called I Do. If anyone wants to read about the important things of, there's tons of data. Gottman does. Is it Gottman that does it, or Ekman? I think. Ah, man, I can't remember who it is. Gottman. I think it's Gottman, and he has a lot of this stuff. The book's called I Do. It's a German name. Forget. I can't think about it. Maybe we'll put it in the link if I find it. But it's actually a really hard book to get if you can get it. There's a
I'm
ton of
looking
books
for it
called I
as
Do, but
yeah.
it's yeah, it's even hard to
The
Google.
secret to doing relationships right.
No, it's just called I Do, blue cover. Um,
What's it about?
it's about marriage and relationships. But yeah, the premise is that a lot of values need to be in common, and you can find those things. But what I was going back with the cake is you have some commonality, and then you also have the ability to negotiate. The ability of what you're saying is having harder conversations and truthful conversations and open conversations, and adaptability, right, is a big deal. But also being able to to watch how people react to that stuff is a big deal. Because if someone, if someone storms off after a little disagreement, right, and that's like being avoidant and wanting them to secretly, you know follow you into the room, you have to look for those things. Those are different styles of communication, and those need to be spoken about. But yeah, we're going off topic of commonality. um, but yeah, I think uh, I think that's good. I am running out of steam here.
There was one topic that you did bring up in the beginning that I wouldn't mind talking about.
Sure.
The fact that work life isn't social life anymore, right? Like that, the fact that right now, right, as you said, like people are wanting to work from home for the rest of the year or for the rest of forever, because of different reasons, and a lot of companies are making it work from home required or whatever, and so they're downsizing on their office spaces and stuff. But with that comes that lack of social life, where a lot of people gain their social life from work. All their friends are people they work with, or the friends of people they work with. And so it's drastically limiting how much of a social life people are going to be having.
Yeah, I spoke with a alumni yesterday as well, and we were talking about this. He, he first off thought he was going to do very well remotely. He first thought like, hey, remote sounds great. I get to do the things that I want at home. And then he soon realized that he was having a very hard time without the many interactions and the people and the socialization. And he's very much looking forward to going back there. Unfortunately, people are also anxious to go back in that situation. They're anxious, and some people are dipping their toes in slowly by meeting up with friends in person first before we go back into the offices, because it could be overwhelming. A lot of people are in the kitchen, people are coming to your desk. Who knows how, depending on your company culture and how many people are there. But yeah, and this goes to also depending on what is home like. If you have kids and family there, if you have really great neighbors and your house is open to friends or not, home might be heaven for you. If
Right.
you have if you have a lot of people hanging out in your apartment complex near the pool, or whatever, like home can be great. And so a lot of these factors are built in to
Yeah,
how you're feeling.
I think that requires having a bit of a social life outside of your work life, where I think, especially in metropolitan areas, and like especially here in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, where like so much of people's social life is their work life.
Always have a social life outside of your work life.
Yeah.
Always, because there's too much. I mean, if it's a small startup and your friends or something, then they very much bleed over. Um, but there's always some political, um, what's the word? Political gaming. What is it?
Like ladder climbing,
Office
or
politics.
office politics. Yeah.
There's always some office politics underlining. If you say the wrong thing, stuff can get spread at work while you're, hanging out, having a beer. And so,
Well, that and like, you're severely limiting to situations like this, where you don't, right now it's like, okay, uh, I've been on a Zoom call with you all day. Now, do I want to go hang out, like go meet up with you and hang out, or would I rather like
of
get
course you
something
do.
refreshing?
I'm the best. You want to
I
come
mean,
to Tahoe and go hiking with me right now?
yeah, I mean that would be dope, but that's not what I
Well, yeah, so
meant.
I know you're right. Does it take place of that? No, not at all. And people are screened out and zoomed out. But I think what you bring up is interesting, because friends, work relationships are very much picked for you. I mean, unless you're the hiring person, you're only hiring, cool friends, right? Um, it's very much a relationship of convenience, right? And so if you go somewhere that was laid out for you, and these are the people you're forced to work with, so you do become friends with them eventually, hopefully, if you're somewhat socially integrated in the world. But it's probably, it could be, but it's probably not going to be as powerful as you knowing and picking the person that you want in the real world,
Right.
right? Picking someone. Of course, you're going to get mentors and great colleagues at work and friends, but if you go out being like, I really want that 100% social freedom and same sense of humor and just someone who loves and cares about me, because you never know, at work there's going to be some, I don't want to say manipulation, but there's some underlying intentions, right? Maybe that person will help you get a promotion, right? Or whatever it might be. And so if you want to be able to pick someone who makes your life better, I don't want to say unconditionally, but because you have a two-way street with each other that goes beyond a profession. You know,
Right.
it opens up the realm of support in other ways. You know, it becomes more of a neighborly feeling rather than a underlying yeah, we work together. You know, but yeah, you know, some friends at work can be really great, especially if you leave the company and go separate ways. I'm sure relationships change, right? Oh, now that we don't work together anymore.
Right.
And then there's some ugly times where you thought someone was your friend at work and you leave work and you found out that, you know, oh, that you're not friends anymore because you
Yeah.
lost that commonality. You know, I've heard a lot of stories like that too. And so, not
And like
to,
I think those work relationships are just easier to maintain because of convenience, right? Like, you know, oh, we're all together, so let's go to the happy hour together. The happy
right.
hour bleeds into the evening, and it becomes more, you know, it's just something that you do because of convenience. And that's why I think right now it's, and in the coming months, it's going to be more important than ever to like build on your own social circle, something around you rather than around where you work, or rather than around the activity that you do, or whatever it is, how you usually create friends, and you know, or meet friends, right? Is it a club that you're in? Is it some sort of sport you play? Is it a place that you go? Right? You know, a lot of these things we can't be doing past 3 months, and we probably might not be able to do for the next couple months. And so I think it's very important that you meet those people there and you qualify them at those places, but you build the social circle around yourself. And like you have that awesome blog that I always send it to like students who are curious about how to like build a social circle. The blog about how to build a social circle. You know, when you were in New York City for 3 months and build your own posse. How to build a posse. That was what
That's
it
what
was
it
called,
was.
right?
Yeah.
How to start a posse or build a posse or whatever. And like that's one great strategy, is like having that that place that you can, or I'm sorry, having that like context that you built that social circle around you, and it's not around anything else. So you can go wherever and you can do whatever, and those people are still going to be there. And
Totally.
you also, because you're not, you know, a lot of the time when you meet people, when you join a social circle, like at a organization, right? Like you work somewhere and you become friends with everybody, you join them, right? And you guys go out to the happy hour afterwards. They all just want to stick together. They just want to stick together, and it's harder to bring people into your circle unless you split up the group a little bit. If the group splits up, then it's like, you know, maybe 2 or 3 people hanging out. You can bring in your outside friends and it's a lot easier. But if it's like a group of 10 people hanging out, there's a lot of the time there is like that incongruence, that like that going against the grain of like bringing people from outside their culture. And then the conversations, if they're not really socially, if they're not jaunty, if they're not like socially intelligent people, they don't take the conversation outside of the context of their work, which a lot of people don't, right? And so it's just harder for that, for anybody on the outside to like get an insight of what you guys are like, or even to integrate into that circle, because you don't have that commonality that we talked
Yep.
about.
Yeah. It should be fluid, right? There should be many angles. And I mean, anyone, you can argue that friendships, I mean, the number one thing obviously is the feeling, right? Is the trust and communication, and the nurturing and caring side, and of the friendship is the reliability, right? And the competence of them being there as a friend. That's like really the, you know, one base of it. And then, you know, to its core, I mean, it's not unfortunately, but you can argue somewhat, there's always some type of back and forth, two-way street, almost like a transactional type of feeling. You can always argue that, but that's not the way we like to look at it, right? It's a value back and forth. But then if you take it out, I think a couple good definitions of a good friend beyond just that feeling and trust and love, is something that I've said, we've all heard before, I think, is that a lot of people say this is, a good friend will be there to really genuinely celebrate and help you and rise you up during the good times as well as the bad times. Right. And then I just thought of this right now, but like a really cool way of describing a friendship is if you think about, if you talk about transactional, right? So a really good friend, the better a friend is, the more difficult it is to explain what those transactions are. Right. So like if you have a friend and you're only friends because, you help each other out with work stuff, right? That's easy to explain. It's easy to be like, oh yeah, we're friends. He really helps me with my SEO and I really help him with his social skills, right? But the better the friend is, the harder it is to define those transactions.
Right.
It gets very subjective, and
There's
it's
no
harder
score.
to explain. What's that?
There's no scorekeeping. There's no
Yeah, exactly. There's no like, this is why I like them. It's more like, this is what I feel.
right.
And that's hard, and it's a hard thing to kind of
Like
put
you
down to
say,
paper.
when somebody asks you about them, you'd be like, this guy's a really good guy, right? You don't say anything about like, oh yeah, he like he's good at what he does for me, right? Or
Right. You're
he's done
like,
this for me or
I
that for
really
me.
feel, I just really feel a bond with them, whatever that means. It's like, it's hard to explain. I really bond with them, or I really trust them, or I love spending time with them is a big one. I love spending time with them. That's really the heart of it. When I think of them, I light up, right? Those are things that you can't really write down of as why. And so you can really tell when someone's a good friend if that's challenging. So putting your finger on why, that means it's a little bit deeper. If you can write it down, then it's not that. If you can write it down easily and it sounds a little reasoning based, then it might be a little surface level. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, oh, I like this guy because he's funny.
Right. He makes me laugh. I mean, yeah, he makes me laugh. But if that's a big overarching part of, they make me feel good overall, then that's good. But if you only like them because they entertain you, that's not a good friend, right? Also, how much you want to give back to them, right? I don't know. It's like that feeling of gratitude, right? Like I'm really grateful to have Craig as a friend. Like I'm really grateful. And it's hard, that's all I can say about that. It's not like I'm grateful. I can be like, wow, he's just very loyal and very, caring and very nurturing, and he's always there for me, and he makes me laugh, but that's not like the one reason. There's a lot under that,
Yeah.
and I think trust is a really big one, especially with me and you. Totally. And I love that. I love you, man.
Love you too. Yeah, I think we could expound upon that whole idea at a later time when we have more brain power.
Let's do it.
I did want to say there's one last thing that you said, that we kind of brought up. You said if you like somebody a lot, I said you just call him a good guy, right? If you feel connected, you're like, yeah, that's a good guy, versus oh, he makes me laugh. Oh, he's always he does this or this for me, right? The thing I was thinking of is we often talk about in class nice guy versus good guy, or nice versus good. And one thing I thought of just the other day is when just based on relationships or dating and stuff, it's a woman will call you a good guy if she wants you, and a nice guy when she's breaking up with you.
Right. Yeah.
You're just a really nice guy. I just, I want the best for you.
Yeah. You can, there's another word for nice that they won't say.
uh, uh,
But what I really think that word is it's one of the worst words you can be called as a man, right? One of the worst words you can be called as a man is harmless. And so uh,
not that we want to be harmful, but
no,
we don't want to be
but you
seen
if you're
as,
harmless, you're useless in a way,
and your stepdaughter.
because it's not about nothing to do with harming other people uh, intentionally. Maybe not nothing. Let me take that back. So you have the capability of probably doing that, right? And so harmless is not, it's not virtuous, which means it's not useful or purposeful or meaningful or pioneering. None of that isn't harmless, right? So I think yeah, men make a lot of mistakes by making themselves, or at least presenting themselves as harmless, right? So you'll have you'll have people with these underlying passive. Um, I love that we're going here. This is where I light up and shit.
Yeah, it's like it's the difference between saying like I couldn't harm a fly versus I wouldn't harm a fly.
Yeah, yeah.
Having the
So
power and choosing not to.
having the power and choosing not to use it, but also being able to express that, right? So you have these. So when people are overly nice, they're very scared of coming. See, guys are very scared of coming across as um, as assertive or powerful, right? Because they're scared of that, because a lot of a lot of the stigma around that as well that goes on. But it's one of the worst things you can do. So they overcompensate in being this like nice and fragile and like, right. And then at the end of the day, they've completely suppressed their real side. Everyone has a little shadow or assertive or even aggressive or mean streak or a little bit of monster inside of them. They suppress it so low that when you don't show any of that, that you have that potential or capability, you have this very fragile shell that no woman wants.
And I think this is like really specific to men too, right? Like men's biggest fears, I think one of the biggest fears that a man has is not being accepted by a woman or the woman he loves, or just not being accepted. This is why we're fucking obsessed with our penis size, right? Like this is why we want it to be adequate, we want it to be more than adequate. We want
Thank
it to
God,
be,
yeah.
yeah, exactly, right. but men, like, and so they try to be nice, right? Because they don't want to offend, they don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. And so because that, they they build up that shell of pushing everything down, and it's this fragile skin. And like nobody wants that. Like nobody wants that in a leader. Nobody wants that in a spouse, right? Like somebody who's just so fragile and nice, or just like too agreeable, right? We want somebody who knows what they want. We want somebody who wants to be, who's just got like it. What's the word? Not intention, integrity, right? They've got integrity in who they are, and they have the capability of doing something about it. They may refrain, and they're able to express themselves. This is all my rants. I love my expression, my rants. My students were telling me the other day, they're like, I love your rants on intention. Like whenever on Monday night, we had class 6, and one of my students was like, she's like, I love it when Craig goes on his rants about intention. Cause I was like, I'm getting on my soapbox here. But
Hell yeah,
expression,
what's important?
right? Like if you can
Expression.
express yourself in a way with integrity, that shows that you are a foundation. You are a
Yeah,
foundation. You are solid. You cannot be wavered by somebody else saying, I don't agree with that. And
right.
if you, I know there's some sort of idiom out there about this. There's multiple idioms. Like if you don't have something to stand on, you don't something to lean. if you don't have that foundation that you stand on, and if it sways with every change in the winds, you're
Yeah.
not going to, it's not going to be anything that you could build yourself upon, and or build any relationship upon. And
Yeah, I
that
think
I was
the
gonna say,
balance.
I was just gonna say that goes back to what we were saying earlier about, like, you can disagree with somebody and still, have the understanding of perspectives, and that makes it a stronger relationship.
Totally. The balance of using your dark side, right? The balance of being able to use it for you rather than use it against you. And when somebody sees someone that has it, I don't want to say under control, but if someone sees someone that knows how to use it, and they know how to, okay, I can pull out my monster a little bit here, and I have to use my monster to be able to ask for this raise or to make my point. And you just use a little bit of it, you throttle it, right? You have a certain amount that you can use at the right times. That person's being much more real than the person who only wears the "I'm a sweetheart, I can't hurt a fly" mask. And going back to what women said, what we're talking about, women and men in this regard, is women want to see real, which comes down to real virtue, and
In that way, you can be a
versus the
sweetheart,
other one.
right? Your
Oh, you
virtue and your
totally can.
values make you a sweetheart. It's not the nicety. It's not the being nice. That doesn't make you sweet.
Right. And no one wants to see, as you called it, that fragile skin, which ties in with circumcision, which ties in to men being obsessed with their penis size.
And that is the podcast.